Hello. So I've started Carl 4. Super different playing field, different map system. This floor that we're on now is so fun in setup. It's a fun concept. The book hasn't necessarily gotten fun yet, but it's a really fun idea that's being presented. So we have 4 quadrants. We have land, sea, air, and sky. No, wait, that doesn't make sense. No, I think that's correct. Anyway, there are 4 quadrants and each quadrant has a castle that must be toppled, that must be defeated, captured, conquered. And each player has to work together because in order to advance past this level, all of the castles have to be conquered, which means that all of the crawlers have to essentially work together, which is super interesting because we have had this dynamic previous where they're all pitted against each other and they can make alliances and build teams, but then those teams fight each other. Sometimes they hunt each other down. Sometimes they become enemies to one another. Like, I'm thinking of some of these players that are still on the board that are going to have to work together, and how can they do that? There are some crawlers that have gotten this far just because they've lucked out. They've gotten some really powerful abilities or potions, and they have used them stupidly. But just because they're so powerful is the only reason that they're still here, but they're not actually useful people, and so to have them on your team is a bit of an inconvenience. I'm specifically thinking about the 2 drunk boys. I don't remember their names just yet, but the two drunk boys that Mordecai forced into sobriety so that they would stop being so useless. We have other crawlers that are a little bit more passive and, maybe work towards getting through each level based off of less offensive maneuverings or based off of leaning on other people. And they're all forced to work together, and they all kind of have to do their part in order for them to advance. So this is such an interesting turn of events. This is such an interesting change of the setting that we're used to. It goes from this Hunger Games type thing to Hunger Games, but now you're all forced to be comrades. I don't imagine it's going to work out well, especially because we have certain crawlers like Chris that we know are hunting us down, that have ill will toward us. And there are crawlers too in this whole setup that have been hunting each other down and have kind of like lost a little bit of their humanity because of the changes that they've undergone in their personhood, like Chris potentially, or for other reasons, just because they've become so, violent and whatever it takes kind of mentality. So the setup concept so far has been super intriguing, but the setup itself isn't that intriguing to me. So I can't say I'm hooked at this point, but I'm excited to get hooked. We also pretty much have the promise that Chris is going to come into play, that we are going to have to confront him and see what's going to happen here. So I'm excited for that too. Anyway, very quick check-in to just talk about the setup and how I'm feeling here at the very beginning, which is mostly hopeful and excited for how interesting this could potentially be. Kind of mad that we're not in the water quadrant, but you can't win them all. Anyway, welcome to the vlog. Hello. So, Carl 4, I'm not quite halfway. Okay, so, some interesting things have happened. Carl remembers his father when his dad got angry and broke his fish tank, and Carl was crying and like picking through the scraps and cutting himself on the glass, trying to save the fish. The fish didn't make it, and his takeaway was, okay, I should never have a pet. I should never have an animal because they die, which he acknowledges now as an adult, probably not the best takeaway. And now that he has Donut in his company, probably, not something that he's lived by, even though she was bees, but he still like had a lot of loyalty to Donut, even though he didn't care about her when Bee, in the last book, when it was revealed that Bee wanted to get rid of Donut in order to, because she's going to sell her, get the money, and then buy a new show cat that's younger and that, she could do more with because, Donut's had her time in the sun. And Carl's like, you're responsible for her. You took her on as your own. You took responsibility for her. Keep her. Get a new show cat. Sure, but like keep her. And loyalty. Carl is all about loyalty. So it clearly isn't that I think the reason this has been introduced is because of one or two things. It could just be like a wearing down of life, when the hardships of life make you want to stop engaging in certain aspects of life anymore, like a disenchantment, like what he had with having a pet that he loved, but then once he experienced grief over that pet, he'd rather just not experience that positive life experience of having a pet because he wants to avoid the grieving. So it could be an exploration of that, or it could be tied to Katrina. Is that her name? I always forget her name. Katya. Tied to Katya, who later on, several chapters later, mentions that all she wanted to do in life was to be a mother. She couldn't be a mom. She couldn't get pregnant, and so she was going to adopt. And she was on the list. It was going to work out. It was all she wanted. She was excited. And then something happened, she didn't say what, that then removed her from the list. And now that opportunity is gone. And she reflects that now she thinks it's a positive thing. It's a good thing that I was never allowed to be a mom, because look at Maggie, which we haven't discussed yet. Look at Maggie and her trauma and the way she's responding to having lost a child. Good thing I never have to go through that. And Carl perceives that that's not entirely honest, that she isn't happy to not be a mom. But there might be, those two things might be tied together. We might be exploring a rejection of something to avoid pain, or a coping of disappointment by just shoving it away, or something in that vein. I'm not entirely sure, but Carl also saved a crowd of children in this section, so plenty of opportunity, I guess, for Katya to fulfill some of her desires of being a mom by taking in some of these kids, or just caring for them, meeting their needs while they're displaced. I'm not really sure. I don't know. There's opportunities, but we have tons of action in this book, as one might expect. Oh my goodness. Aerial assaults, cities being destroyed or at least badly damaged, gnomes attacking. Chris is here. Oh my goodness. So lots going on. Lots of chaos, the Carl stuff. Lots of action, lots of battles, lots of fights, lots of the AI being really grumpy and really moody at Carl. And then it turns out that it's because Carl wasn't stomping the hamsters or gerbils with his feet. Anyway, I want to talk about Chris. Okay, all this time I've been waiting for Chris to show up, and I've been very impatient about it. And now he's here, and it did not disappoint. Oh my goodness, what a twist. What a reveal that Chris, the reason that his personality has been wrong all this time, the reason he changed is because Maggie was taking over his body, that she was the one controlling him. He was still in there. He's still in there. He hasn't been killed and, what is it, like reanimated? Is that what it's called? Yeah, I think I said it right. He's not been killed, and his body isn't being used as a puppet. I mean, it is being used as a puppet, but he's still in there. He's still alive. Maggie's just been controlling him, which means that when Chris killed Frank in the last book, which I didn't even notice, someone DM'd me and was like, hey, by the way, you did miss Chris in the last book. But when Chris killed Frank in the last book, it was Maggie. It was Maggie going after Frank. Oh my goodness, it was terrible. It was terrible, because then Carl is going through all of this and trying to figure out, how can I save Chris? Because Chris is still in there, and Chris is still my friend. And what's been happening lately, that's not it. So Carl's trying to figure it out, and it's not going to work out. He can't just like drag Chris out of there, because they're not even I think the detail was they're not supposed to be fighting for the same quadrant. So once Carl goes down the staircase, they'll be separated. I don't remember exactly what the details were, but for whatever reason, Carl wasn't going to be able to do it, and he couldn't even just like punch through to be able to pull Chris out because of the rock and the magma, and because Maggie was like in the brain. I don't know. It was crazy. So anyway, Carl has kind of a breakdown, because he's like, what do I do? Like, what can I do? Like begging for some sort of answer to help him. And Mordecai reminded him, you can't save everyone. So Carl just tells Chris Brandon's message. And then what? Like he tells him that Brandon loves him. He tells him what Brandon wanted him to say, but But then what? Like, surely he's not dead, right? Tell me he's not dead. Tell me Chris will be okay. Because now that I've gotten this big reveal, one, it was an excellent scene, but two, I feel so bad for Chris. I thought we were gonna have this big battle. I thought we were gonna have this big like drama thing, and what I got instead was my heart is broken. So, can we save Chris? I don't know. I have to keep reading. Hello. Oh my goodness.St of all, Chris is still alive. I'm so nervous. I'm so overwhelmed. Good job, Donut, for finding a way to protect Chris, even though we can't separate him from Maggie yet. Like, we're still preserving him, and we're gonna figure out a way. I feel more hopeful. If it seems like if Chris were to die in this book, then he would have died in that big emotional moment when Carl, I have this issue in my mind, I don't know how to explain it, but when two characters have the same first letter, like Chris and Carl, I scramble them in my brain. It's a problem. It's been a problem with other series too. Anyway, sorry. So if Chris were going to die, then Carl would have, in that big emotional moment when he was like, how do I save him? I don't know what to do. And Mordecai says, you can't save them all. He would have died in that scene, right? But the fact that we're preserving him, the fact that we're keeping him alive for a little bit longer makes me think there's a reason, right? Surely it's not just to preserve him longer to make his later death that much more tragic. That feels cruel. And this game isn't cruel. Right? Okay, so something that's super interesting that's happened. This is probably going to be a quick check-in because it's just a lot of chaos. Like, we're at the point in a Carl book where we're just fighting a lot of different people and encountering a lot of different obstacles and trying to get to our goal at the end. So I'll probably just highlight several big moments that were really effective for me. I don't want to sound reductive in the way that I just described that, because this book is distinctly different from the others. The floor layout and the kind of hurdles that we're experiencing in this book, plus the fact that we're really kind of going head to head against the powers that be, not just the level bosses. So it's very different from other Carl books, but, you know, the formula is still similar in that even though the details are very different and the overarching conflict is very different, it's still, Carl has to face a bunch of different opponents, bunch of different obstacles, and be tested as a man, as a person, as well as the rest of the team has to be tested, and then we get to, so anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, great. So we're in the chaos mode. We're facing a lot of different things, but a couple of things that I want to mention. It's super interesting to me, building on what I mentioned before about, the Carl losing a pet and then thinking, okay, no more pets, and that's kind of his reaction. And Katya losing her opportunity to adopt and then saying, no, it's great that I don't have children, like that kind of reflection and rejection. Zev has been a really interesting character as well, because now she's been reintroduced and she has been altered and her personality is super different. She no longer has sentience. Well, that's not true. She's still sentient. She no longer has a developed personality, and she's been essentially reset back into, this is what we want you to be by the book, offer the information that's needed, and then leave. No personal relationship. And they're even kind of barring Carl and Donut from her. Like, the interactions are brief. They can only interact with her if she initiates the interaction, stuff like that, which is very interesting to me because the AI, too, is changing a lot. From book 1 to book 4, he continues to have more personality, opinions, his descriptions of things are getting more and more off the rails, but also potentially getting edited. So it seems like the systems that they've set in place are growing and evolving with the players, but that's not what they want to happen. They don't want them to be attached to the crawlers and to grow and to potentially develop affection for the crawlers. That's what I'm assuming is happening here. I don't know how much that actually ties with the other two things that it made sense in my head, but now that I'm saying it all out loud, I don't actually know if that's all tied, but I think it could be, because they've essentially lost Zev, to an extent anyway. They've lost her because she has been altered, and who she once was is gone. And I guess you can also anchor that to Chris. Almost said Carl, but I'm gonna I got him straight. That also happened to Chris, in that he's still alive, yet they have to mourn him now because he's been altered in a different kind of way. He's been taken over by Maggie, and now we have to defeat Maggie without harming Chris. And is there a way to separate those two? Is it possible to save Chris, or are we ultimately going to have to kill a friend in order to kill the one, that's causing harm and destruction? It's kind of a scary thought. And will that anchor back to the other conversations we've had? Is that going to disrupt Carl's ability to really connect with individuals because he is forced into these horrible situations? Because the fish story, he said, sometimes life wears you down so much that you stop wanting to interact with it, or something along those lines. And I'm wondering if that's going to be tied into Chris. I'm scared. I should not be so invested in this character, but I just am. Will what he ultimately has to do with Chris make him hardened and distant because life is wearing him down, or rather the game is wearing him down? Oh, I'm nervous. Oh, I'm so nervous. Okay, let's keep moving, because there's a lot to talk about. I just said this was going to be short. Already we've failed. A lot of really interesting things are happening. We have Bonnie, who says she's trying to have a lemonade stand, but she's covered in blood. And I think she greets them something along the lines of, did you come to kill my father? You're too late. He's already dead. And his body's like just over there. And that whole situation was very haunting. There's the whole thing with Juicebox and her brother, that they were able to get the artifact, the Gate of the Feral Gods, which the powers that be don't want Carl to use because it could potentially break everything. And he uses it, and it breaks everything. Not everything. Everything on level 9, I believe it was. He just floods the whole thing, like destroys it, which is so cool that at this point in the story, Carl isn't just trying to defeat, I think I already said this, isn't just trying to defeat what's in front of him, but he's actually going against the game makers. He's going against those that are pulling the strings and now messing up their game, interfering with their plans, which is actually setting them back. Like, it's effective, it's working, but at the same time, they can't just totally destroy him. They can't just kill him because he's proving to be a problem, because he's a fan favorite. So they need to keep him, but they can't control him. And even down to the game show thing that they did, where they wanted him to promote the toys, and he wouldn't read the script, and instead he's implying that they're trying to do something really, nefarious with these toys. And like, he continually risked his own life by butting up against them, and by being so digging his heels in so much and saying, you cannot control me. I'll let you control me to the extent that I don't feel I have a choice. But if I have any opportunity to push back, you cannot control me. You will not break me. I will break you. Which leads us to what just happened with, Laurel? Loida? So, okay, an admin. Carl killed an admin, which has happened before. But the way it was done was enough to send someone along and say, what are you doing? Who's your informant? How did you manage this? And Carl, of course, can't say, because if he even mentions the cookbook, if he tells anyone what happened, then the cookbook disappears. And the question is, like, people have killed admins before, but the way you did it, this is like the best way that it could have been done. You have an informant. And the truth is, the informant is a collection of voices, a collection of a collection of crawlers that are building on each other and supporting each other and helping each other outside of time, right? Like, because of the cookbook, over the course of time, they're building together and helping each other in this ultimate, like, what they're going to do to defeat the system. I love it. I love the inclusion of the cookbook and how this is working with, how Carl is working with it, and also just the secretiveness around it, so that people don't know what to target. in order to get Carl to take it from his hands. But that whole scene was so emotional. It was so strong. You know, Carl, we're seeing a lot more of Carl, not just his loyalty and not just his need to protect even those that it doesn't make sense that he should risk himself to protect, but like he can't leave someone behind. We're seeing a lot of the cracks in him as well. Like when he was removed for several days, he and Donut were removed for several days and they returned, and Katya and Mordecai and the rest actually did a really good job without them. Like they held their own and accomplished a lot, and like a lot of progress was made without them. And both Donut and Carl are just like, oh, this is good. Yay. You know, like Carl is just like, I thought they needed me more than this. That feels weird. You know, like, so we see that he is a leader, and oftentimes a reluctant leader, like he just does what needs to be done, but also in his mind, he's essential. And seeing the others do well without him, that's a good thing, but it's also like, I thought I mattered a little bit more than that, which he does. But, you know, that's a great piece of character to see. To also, we're seeing a lot more of his anger continually as the books go on. We're seeing a lot more. We've seen his brokenness in his flashbacks, which we continue to see, but we're also seeing a lot more of his rage and understandably, rightfully, that's been triggered by this sick game that's being played, and what it's putting people through continually as he sees characters like Maggie and Chris be so affected by the game and by what people are forced to do to survive it. It affects him. He is moved by it. And now he's not just trying to survive, but he's trying to break the system, break the game, break the taskmasters, because they're trying to break him, and he will not allow it, and he's turning on them, and he's going to turn that around to the best of his abilities, whether it kills him or not. But his anger, his rage is becoming more of a feature in the story as he continues to be worn down by what he has to witness and what they all have to survive through. So yeah, really good stuff. Katya too is a character that I wasn't really interested in her introduction, and has continued to be more of a meek character, but she's growing a lot. She's coming into her own, and I'm starting to warm to her. I know it sounds crazy. I feel like she's probably a fan favorite, but we're getting more from her, more of her personality, and she's coming into her own, and she's becoming a character in her own rights rather than someone who's just following commands. And I'm building with her as well as like so many side characters. We have tons of side characters. We have, of course, naturally with the setup of this book, we have a lot going on. And I think Dinniman is doing a good job of giving them strong personalities in a short period of time. So I'm enjoying engaging with a lot of different characters. And there's so much that's being built up for kind of a wider understanding of the scope of this world and what's to come that is a lot of fun to watch build up. There's also a lot of nonsense happening. Like, for instance, we now have a sentient sex doll head in our party. At this point, I think Dinniman has realized that he can do whatever he wants, and he's like, okay, let's see how far we can take things. So she just, Samanti or something like that, she just joined our party. So we'll see what comes of that. I'll see you at the end of the book. Okay, I just finished Carl 4, and I'm leaving in like a minute, so let me try to get my thoughts out. I'm very overwhelmed. This is a very overwhelming ending. It's a very overwhelming series. There's so much that happens, and in this book, that's no change, but also this book was so emotional to me. Like, I was really upset and invested and moved, and there's too much going on. A lot more chaos is going on. We get sacrificed to an octopus shark creature thing and her babies. There was a pterodactyl fight, a fight with a two-headed dog, or rather a rescue of a two-headed dog. At one point, Carl is throwing the head of Samantha around while she's screaming about that she's gonna kill his dead mother. I mean, chaos. Chaos, just one thing after another, constant battles, constant fight, constant leveling up. So much happening here. Carl now serves one of the gods of this world. Emerus, I think was the name. He now serves Emerus, and then now Emerus is giving him quests. Emerus? I don't remember, is now giving him quests, avenge my son, kill my brother, bringing more intensity into this. And he has to make, I think it was regular sacrifices, was it? Or visits to temples. There was a lot to take in there at the end, but he now has regular devotion expectations in this servitude, but also it looks like we're going to be getting a lot out of it as well, potentially. There's a lot that was going on here at the end that was very much set up for, okay, now we have items and information that is going to carry us into other books, that's going to be useful in other books. Some bigger elements, some major emotional beats. The cost of taking a life is certainly emphasized in this. We're continuing to watch Carl be pushed to his limits. We're continuing to watch him change and become more of he's always been a fighter physically, but he's becoming more of a fighter as a person who's done with these games. Essentially, you've been toying with us, and you've been making us destroy each other. Now I'm making you destroy yourself. Now I'm coming for you. Now you're the one that's going to be destroyed. Which the end of book 3 indicated that was the direction we were going in as well, but book 4 is pretty clear on that. I'm so glad that we were able to remove Maggie from Chris. The potion he took that made him go through a rock and be able to handle that situation, I needed that. But we also lost Katya. She's leaving our company, she's leaving our group, and it makes sense. And of course, Carl and Donut want to be there with her, and she's like, no, I have to do this thing. You can't come with me. And she's really getting her own. She's on her own. She has her own personality, she has her own goals, she has her own ambitions, and I love that for her. So much is changing so rapidly. We're losing lives. We're changing how we're interacting with the game. The game itself is changing. I think I already mentioned the AI is shifting a lot and doing his own thing, whatever he wants to be doing, to include giving us stuff that maybe we shouldn't have yet. I think maybe Odette is planning a rebellion. Is that what the epilogue was saying? Which I anticipated something like this might be coming from her. So that's really exciting, as well as B is, I mean, of course she's still alive. I expected her to still be alive, but she's alive and we're with her, and it's so crazy to see her in this state. You know, we've known her based off of her actions and the way that she's treated Carl and wanted to discard Donut, but now we see her in the midst of a broken world. She herself being very broken, you know, like she found Ferdinand, and it doesn't matter that Ferdinand doesn't want her. It doesn't matter that he's not a companion to her. She's holding him and rocking back and forth with him, taking the injuries that come with loving a cat that doesn't love you back. But, you know, she has clearly also been very affected by all the changes of the world and all the destruction that's been wrought with this sick game. Just her in a different area, in a different way. Brad seems like a real piece of work, but I'm really excited about this too. I hope she does come into the story more actively soon, because, you know, I knew she would, and I had some theories as to how she might. This is not what I expected. This is more interesting than anything that I expected. So I'm really excited about that. This book was a lot. I'm trying to think how I think it feels like a 4. It feels like a 4, which feels a little bit crazy because so much happened and there were some huge emotional beats to it. So I don't know. I'm gonna sit on it and we'll see. My wrap up is coming out next week, so I'll give you a definitive score then. I won't officially rate it right now, but having just finished it, literally just turned off the audiobook and then sat down here to talk to you before I run. Not literally run. Running's the worst, but you leave. I am very overwhelmed by this book. It had it pulled at me emotionally more than the others did. I felt very anxious reading this one. But it was also very chaotic, things happening, you know, explosions everywhere. But I like the wider scale plotting that we're continuing to build on, that we're continuing to expand out, and how the books are really starting to feel different now. Like, you know, there's a formula set forth from book 1 and expectations set, and now we're really ripping those expectations apart, turning everything around, because Carl himself is ripping things apart and turning them around, and that forces the series to do that too, which I really like. Those are my very overwhelmed final thoughts about the book. Probably not the most cohesive, but I feel a little bit like at the end of this book. So that's where I am, and that's That's my final thoughts. I'll sort it out by the wrap up, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But great book. Very much enjoyed. I'm gonna take a breather. I had said that I might do books 4 and 5, or at least start book 5 as well in July, but I'm not. I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna rest a second, focus on some other things, and then circle back to Carl. I want to take my time a little bit more because I'm running out of books very quickly, so I don't want to just, run out quickly. Anyway, I'd love to continue chatting with you about the book. There's so many things that happened here, so I know there's stuff that I didn't discuss, so if you want to discuss more stuff in the comments, please do. I'll see you again soon. Bye.